here's a quick video update on where I am at the end of the summer. This is summer 2025. We're kind of going into what some of us call modeling season, and kind of wrapping up the outside work and getting to spend a little more time on the railroad. Still have other obligations that will keep me from working at the pace I used to work at, but I am making some progress. And as you can see, we're looking at one of the big things here, which is getting the shed built that's over the first dump bin, and then also doing a little bit of pre-planning down here. Now, this isn't the shed that I'm going to use for the coke bin. This is one from the old layout, but I'm using it here just as a kind of a placeholder to get a little bit of a perspective on what it's going to look like. You can also see coming up from the back there, not sitting in its final location, but it's the conveyor that comes from the coal chute that comes up to the coke dump chute. This would carry slack coal, which is a very fine coal, and it would have fed it down to the coke ovens. On the prototype, there would have been a coke crusher located down here that would have crushed coke, or would have crushed coal to the appropriate size for making coke. That coal would have been dumped from here. And I'm assuming that this would have been fine coal, although I guess it could have brought any coal up here because it was feeding in this chute before the crusher. But for lack of a better reason or better name, I'm calling it just a slack conveyor. Now, the disappointing situation I have here is that these two structures are actually too close together. This should have been about 2 more feet farther down the line there, and that conveyor would have been at a much more gradual angle coming up here, but I've kind of had to exaggerate it, which I'm not 100% happy with the way that looks, but I don't have any choice. I could leave it off and just not have it at all, or have it in the shape that it's at. There's going to be a kind of an extension that comes out back here. When I do build the actual shed here, there'll be an extension that kind of comes out, kind of like a doghouse lean-to that this conveyor goes into. I might try to use these walls and just take everything from the roof off and rebuild that. It's about the right length. I guess it's a little long here, but I might be able to use these sides. I'm still thinking about that. More than likely I won't, but it does save some strip wood, and it is framed pretty nice inside. We'll see when I get there. I did mock up the chute that's coming down from the coke coal receiving bin here. This one actually goes all the way down to the ground here, unlike the one on the other end there, which is up on, I guess you'd call them bents. And this one I ended short of the backdrop here because there would have been another conveyor coming up from here going up into the coke supply bin. There was like a big bin here that the conveyor would have fed, but it would have been farther into the wall that way. So I just ended this here, and the roof will come, kind of down on top of here, and maybe you'll see a hint of the conveyor starting there. I'm not sure how I'm going to get to that yet, but if we kind of swing around the other side here, you can kind of see how that conveyor comes out of the bottom of that chute there. I think it'll be a good addition to see both of these units in and functioning. I did drill the hole in the bottom, or cut the hole with a hole saw, so as soon as I get this done, this is a chute. It does have a floor in it, so we can wire that up and start using that one as well. So we're taking another look here at the coal processing plant receiving bin shed. Kind of a long name, but some of the things that have happened here, as you can see, I've got the hole in the wall, and I've kind of explained a little bit about this in Facebook of how I came to the design of this. I'll go through it real quick here. I think what they did is, I think when they cut this hole in here, there used to be posts in here because this is a post frame building. And then at some point, maybe it was after the first winter or after some time, the roof started sagging right here. And I think to keep this area open, a board was placed right here to kind of support this out a little bit farther. That's all, of course, speculation. Nobody, I guess, really would know. There'll eventually be a bridge coming back through here for the dump trucks to dump into. It'll go over the top of this oil tank right here. And one of the things you can see here is that I don't know if this is exactly prototype, but I had to add this in. This is a piece of wood that supports some boards that slope down. if I don't have this here, what happens is the coal will just kind of overshoot this edge and spill down in here. So this is a board that just runs all the way across in here. And inside of there, there's some angled boards. So if we look on the inside, there's also some angle boards, and those I can see in the photograph. I think those are actually there. An interesting feature of this shed here, and I went through this in great detail on Facebook, but I'll kind of go through it here, is that I noticed that in the photograph that the wall here was 3 boards wide, and the one here was just 1 board wide. And what you're actually seeing here is this is the post that makes up the corner of the post frame construction, where this one has 2 posts. It has a post right here, and it has a post in the corner. And inside of here, there's a handrail that you can kind of clearly see in the photograph with these angled boards. And you can also see these 2 boards right here in the photograph from the book. What happens is I think this wall overhangs here. For what reason, I don't know, but it's not, the building isn't symmetrical on top of here. This wall is flush with this side, which you can see but in the photograph, but this wall sticks out. And what gives it away is that the railings that go on top here that I've yet to put on, they're out to the edge of this platform here, and they meet the inside corner of this wall where they continue on through there. And the only reason why I could figure to have a railing in the building is to protect people from going, stepping off the edge of this. There'd be no other reason to have a railing right up against a wall. So there must have been a gap in there. And again, for what reason, I don't know. Maybe it was to look down into the chute. We'll never know, I guess. But I built this with kind of an asymmetrical type look here. Now the opening is centered over the tracks because it has to be, because the standard gauge track is in the center of the opening. So when the narrow gauge cars come through here, they favor this right side a little bit. Also in the structure, you can see the tube right here that comes down. That will be connected to a longer tube that'll go through the scenery. And what we see in here is that I've got the air ducting up inside of the roof there. You can also see I added some LEDs in there. Those are the same LEDs I use in the loading, the strip tipple loading shed. They help just give a little more light in there when we're operating. And I don't know if they ever operated this at night. I did read one story about trains coming out of Sewell with, in the dark where they could see sparks flying. But again, I don't really know, but I will be doing some lower light operating sessions with my operators here. And I think some of them will appreciate having some lighting in there. So you can't see those from anywhere in here. It'll just make that a little brighter, and they'll be able to see. It'll be easier to see where you have to stop the car in order for it to make contact and unload. The next step for this structure is to finish the shed here on this section here and get it all functioning. Once I get all that operating, I'm gonna run it for just a little bit to make sure it's all gonna be working fine. Maybe we'll have an operating session again at that point. But then there'll be the long process of me taking the entire assembly out of here to finish the scenery that's down in between, at least between, I'll probably have to come all the way back to this pier here and go all the way to the end, probably all the way to the backdrop, because there's not much from here to there. But I want to do all the finished scenery in there, paint the concrete parts, get this tank in here, and then put it all back in for the last time. At that point, then I'll detail out, put the railings and put the bridge in here and do all the finished detail work on it, finish up the structures with their final details. So one other project I've been working on is to build more hopper cars. It became obvious with the last operating session that I was going to be short hopper cars. What I have right now is 17 hopper cars built, but that's just enough to run the 2 coal trains. And if we start throwing in the cars that would get bad ordered, it wouldn't be long before we'd be out of hopper cars. And so I knew that long ago, but I didn't think I would need to get to it quite so soon. What I'm going to do is I'm going to build, I have enough supplies to build 5 more. I'm going to build those 5 cars. And then I think I'm going to need 5 more after that. So the goal is a total of 10 more cars, maybe 11 more to bring us up to 28 cars. But what I want to do for the next set of cars is I actually want to build the last set of cars that the Mans Creek made, the large, slightly larger 20-ton cars. And those cars had a steel frame in them that ran the length of the car, and they had these steel plates on the end and a C channel going across the end. And so again, you can see the center sill is actually a C channel as well. And what I thought I would do is 3D print the whole center piece here. And you can kind of see this one. This is a failed print here, but this is the first almost not failed. It has just a couple things, and I did break it right here that I got to glue that back together. But this will be the first one that I'm going to kind of go through and also experiment with some weathering here. This is just a first stage of some weathering. This will be rusted up here. So with this car, I built it exactly the same way that I built my other wood cars. I started out with a cutting jig here. Now this jig here, I printed myself. My previous cars, I actually had to use Shapeways because I didn't have a 3D printer then. But this one I printed on an FDM printer. And what you do is you slide in all the different pieces of wood in here for the different parts of the car. And then this is the edge where you cut them off flush to this jig, and then you can just pop them out of there. Those pieces then fit inside these gluing jigs, and you've seen me use these gluing jigs before with the glue slots, so you don't glue the part into the car. But there's the side, and there's an end. I also have a door one. Another kind of neat one I made here, this one goes over the end of the car, and you can kind of, I'll show you on the other end here. What you do is you can slide it. There's kind of, this corner is what you'd call the datum, and then this just kind of holds it down. You'd slide it in tight, and then you'd run a drill bit, and I just do it by hand through each one of these holes. And what it does is it drills the holes then for the footboard brace. You can see a sample is stuck on here, and then those will just get put in the holes across the end, and it keeps them nice and level. Now, what was kind of fun about this car is when I built this body in this jig, and I 3D printed this part separately, the fit on these was so tight that it goes right in, and all these corner pieces lined up perfect. Even the one that has kind of a slight, I guess you'd call a milled out end piece. You can kind of see it if I pop that up a little bit. All that fits perfectly in and perfectly fits tight. So that's going to be kind of a neat car. Here's the side door here. Now with this one, I'm trying to use a different motor. It's a much smaller motor, and this motor allows me to put it in the center of the car. So when this goes in here, that the door actuating arm will be right in the center, which will pull the doors more evenly in. On my previous cars, the motor was so big that the doors actually pulled shut out here, and it caused these ends not to sit quite so tight on there. And I think these will work better. If I can get this one to match the speed of the original ones, I'll use it. If not, what I'm actually contemplating doing is seeing if I just rebuild all new center sections for the original 17 cars so that the door pulls are all in the middle, and then use this motor for all those cars and all the new cars, because I can get this motor still. I can't find the other motor anymore. I don't know what where to find it. So yeah, and if not, and I can find it, there's plenty of room in here to put the other one in there. And what I might do is put a rod that still makes the pivot in the middle, but a rod will actually operate the middle pivot on there. So this will be fun to get 5 of these built and working. It'll add a lot, and then I'll work towards getting the rest of the 5 or 6 done. What's nice about this car is that I am doing all my own 3D printed parts. So on my previous cars, the only thing I 3D printed were the jigs, and every single thing on those cars was scratch built, even all the metal parts. And I have a video series some of you may have seen to show how I scratch build all those. But on this one, I'm going to be able to build or print my own metal parts that go on here. So you can see this one's failed. It actually has a little hole right there, but this is one of the angle irons that'll go across the top. This one's not a fail. So this one, when it comes off here, will get stuck on the car with the mitered part to the top. So that'll go just like this. And then I have the short ones for the ends here with the bracket for the brake wheel. Those will go on the end when I take those off of these. So that one I just actually broke, but these will go on. And now I'll have actually real metal angles. They're very thin. I want to keep those extremely thin because on the prototype they're really thin. It's one of the reasons why I don't use pre-made angle, because it's way too out of scale. And even though these are extremely fragile, as you saw, I broke that one. If I'm really careful and I glue these on here, once they're glued on, they should be plenty sturdy enough. I also 3D printed this time all the door latch mechanisms, so I don't have to go and cut those out of styrene for every single one of those, and that should save a lot of time. I also, what is kind of neat, is I 3D printed all of my own hinges. Here you can see the hinges. Now these I print in Frozen's RPG resin, and this is the one that goes on the door, and this other one goes on the upper body. And what's neat about this one is it has the bends in it to go around the different metal bracing that's on the outside. So this upper part here actually will get glued over the top of that upper angle on there. And then this bottom offset on here will go over the strap of steel that goes across the top of the door opening here. There's one that goes all the way from this side to this side. So this will be really nice to have these without having to modify the Grant line parts that I used on the previous models. Earlier in one of my videos, I said that I'd be open to answer any questions that any of you guys had. And one of the questions was on operations. So I did an operation video because I thought that was a really long question to answer. The second question I had was on detailing models. And the question kind of sounded like an open question, like how does someone know how much detail to put on a model? But I decided to take that as how much detail do I know what to put on a model? And I would say that that's, it kind of varies. And I've changed my opinion on that over time. And the reason why we're looking at my display cabinet here is because many of these models were models I built long ago. And probably about a third of these were entered into contests. And contest models are a lot different, I think, than layout models. A contest model has to have just about everything you can possibly think of and then some. Now, a layout model, I find, really only needs to look good as it's running on the layout. The higher priority for me is that it operates good and that it's easy to maintain, because making it easy to maintain will, of course, help with making it operate good. Now, I do like to add detail, but if the detail causes any sacrifice to point A and B, meaning that if it's hard to maintain and doesn't operate well, then it's really worthless to me. What I find better on a layout is that the models are well weathered and blend into the scene. Matter of fact, a well-weathered model will actually look more detailed than a solid painted model that's all glossy with a lot of detail. An example of that would be these steam locomotives. They actually look a lot more detailed than they really are because the weathering makes the details that are there pop out. So even though I do have cars that have complete underbody detailing, I don't find it exactly necessary to do, because from the layout you really can't see those very well. And a lot of that stuff does get in the way of the truck swinging, and it just adds a lot of time. Now, I do enjoy doing it, but at the moment, most of my cars do not have full brake rigging. It's mostly just suggested. Now, structures are a little bit different because some structures, especially in O scale, the ones that are close to the layout edge, you can see inside the windows quite easily. And so this one here, does have a full interior in it because it's right next to the edge of the layout and it's up high and you can easily see in it. Also, the engine house with its big doors is going to need some interior detailing. This particular structure here has the start of a lot of roof detailing in it that I'll have to finish up. Other structures like these ones back here that are a little bit away from the edge of the layout and they will be kind of hard to see in, they're going to have very minimal interior detailing, focusing more on the details outside and around it and the weathering on the outside of it. So in the years past, I did do a lot of contest modeling, and I show these awards not because I'm bragging about them, but to show that I did at one time build up to a level that I felt was worthy of entering in contest. But those contests are mostly for me to build my modeling skills, because I like to have my models judged and and have others see what they see could be improved. And I grew a lot during those times, but I did find out that also having an operating layout, that some of that stuff is just not practical enough. So again, for me, operating models, good weathered models, easy to maintain models are way more important than all out full detailed models. So I hope that maybe helps you decide what you would want to do for your models as far as how far you'll carry the detailing. So again, thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.